Hi everyone, this is my lecture on the Arthurian legend. So the story first comes to us from Geoffrey of Monmouth in AD 609, so very early on in the Dark Ages. And he's writing about Arthur in his Historia Brittonum, or the history of Britannia. It's not Great Britain just yet, but this is just a culmination of a bunch of folk tales and possibly a real person that becomes this great mythical, magical story that has lasted over the last, 2,000 years practically. Then Thomas Malory wrote Le Morte d'Arthur. That is the death of Arthur in French. And he wrote this in the Middle Ages, 15th century, so about the 1400s. Then Alfred Lord Tennyson brought Arthur back with The Lady of Shalott in 1832. The Lady of Shalott is a kind of an epic poem about a lady who is not supposed to look at Camelot. She does, and then she ends up dying. That's the short story version of it. Mark Twain will write about Arthur in A Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court in 1889. So now it's come across the pond to America, and Twain puts his twist on the King Arthur story. And then T.H. White, so going back across the pond to Britain, wrote The Once and Future King. It's a very good book if you ever have time to read it. So who is King Arthur? He's possibly a real person mixed with a fictional character or group of men who fought in various battles leading up to the Dark Ages. He essentially protected Britain from the Saxon invasion. So the Anglos and the Saxons, but the Anglo-Saxons are coming from Germany, and they are the first to invade Britain, and then next it will be the Normans. Excalibur. So the whole story is based on the turbulent times in Britain in the Dark Ages, and the legend states that if someone could pull the sword out of the stone, he would become King of England. And this is because King Uther Pendragon is a horrible leader. There's people fighting for power, and the Archbishop of Canterbury and Merlin kind of counsel one another in who's going to be the next king. Well, Arthur is born from a tryst between Uther and this lady he has a crush on, and so Merlin decides that Arthur is going to be the next king. And so Arthur pulls the sword out of the stone easily because it's predetermined that he's going to be king, and brings it to his brother Kay. So Sir Kay is one of the 10 knights who is fighting in a joust, and he forgets his sword at the hotel, and so he sends Arthur to go get it, and this leads us to the King Arthur story. Excalibur and the sword in the stone are two separate swords to some versions of the story. Other versions say that it's the same sword. Kind of depends on what source you're reading it from, but Excalibur technically comes from the Lady of the Lake. That is in a different story. The sword in the stone is blessed by Merlin and the Archbishop of Canterbury. Camelot. This is the fictional castle where Arthur and his wife Guinevere resided, and it is considered a prime example of how government and its cities should function. So it is a place that is peaceful. Everybody loved being there, and they talk about the Kennedy administration being like Camelot because they just saw the couple as being peaceful, wanting to help everybody, and it was supposed to be the good times, right, in the early 1960s. Then you have the Knights of the Round Table. So here I found this really awesome graphic of who sits next to Arthur at the table, and their shields. I mean, those look cool. So the knights are Arthur's group of friends who help him fight battles. Some of them protect the Holy Grail, and they determine the laws and customs of England. And then this is some paintings. I have two paintings here. They're very famous. This one is the Lady of Shalott, and she is from the medieval era. And then this one is another Lady of Shalott, and this is from 1888. And just notice the detailing. And so even in the 1800s, they're still talking about King Arthur. So that's very interesting.